Hello everyone, and good morning and welcome to the garden. I'm really excited to be here with you guys this morning and be able to kind of begin to talk about the shift to winter. I know it probably doesn't feel like it. As you can see, my sweater's tied around my waist and I'm actually a little warm. But the plants definitely know that the shift is here. The butterflies know, the caterpillars know, everything else does know that that's going on. And so this is a good time of the year to begin to think about, seriously, if you haven't already began preparing for potential freezes, now is the time to do that. Sometimes down here where we're at in zone 9 on the coast, we actually will get a overnight freeze in November. More likely it'll come toward the end of December and certainly into January. And then who knows whether we'll get one of those really, really hard freezes. I, however, am preparing for that to a degree, but on the same token, one of the things I taught a class out here yesterday afternoon, and one of the things that a lot of folks noticed was that there are things growing out here that are traditionally grown in the summer or in the fall. And the reason we're able to do that is because sometimes we can get a quick short season of some of those things like green beans that you might want to eat at your Thanksgiving table. Now, if you're in the north, then of course you've got green beans right now. And of course you've got squash and all of the things that might have been traditionally eaten culturally in the Thanksgiving area in other places more north than us. But for us, what we have to do is shift the seasons around and have those green beans down here because we're just finally cooling down from the summer in order to actually put seeds in the ground. Our trick is whether or not we can get that stuff to produce before we have that first frost or that first quick little snap of freeze that will knock out a lot of that summer stuff. And so far, it looks like we're going to be getting to Thanksgiving without having any kind of a cold snap, freeze, or frost that would cause any problems for anything like the green beans, the tomatoes, things like that. Now, we are getting another cold front tomorrow evening, as I understand it, so we are going to have another little drop in temperature. But some of the things that you need to keep in mind as it relates to that, especially if you're doing a whole lot of seed starting on your own, is things like the amount of daylight hours that we're dealing with. And if you've got things like, look back here, Joe, at this big tree. We've got this huge hackberry tree. And what happens is that in the morning, in the summertime, it's fantastic because it doesn't lose its leaves. So in the summertime, it gives this corner of the garden a shade, which means this corner of the garden actually performs better for longer in the summertime. But in the wintertime, this is a tree that would need to be pretty drastically trimmed in order or to prepare for the wintertime in order for this side of the garden to actually get as much sun as it needs. And you can actually tell the difference when you look at this section that was actually planted prior to another section down there. Now, I've been harvesting and replanting and weeding and harvesting and replanting. But as we make our way a little further down the garden where you'll see fairly newly planted places that I am also harvesting and weeding and replanting and germinating and all of that, you'll see a lot more growth happening. So these are the types of things that you can and should be paying attention to as you're hanging out in your gardens as we begin to see this shift. And that's the reason why I want to talk about shifting, because a lot of times down here in the south, we tend to act like we don't have seasons. But the fact of the matter is that just because our temperatures stay in actually a very nice range of 75 to 85 for a lot of the year, we do have different seasons. Things act differently. The temperatures of the way the soil is different in this fall season. Things are going to germinate faster when you put them in the soil than they're going to germinate in indoors at this time of the year. Now, as we move into the springtime, when our soil temperatures are still cooler, especially if you've got a really, really cold winter, our soil temperatures are not going to germinate as fast as something inside a more warm, acclimated greenhouse or something like that, or even you might have some warming pads underneath your seed starting, because those are the types of things that I want to bring to your attention when it comes to the shift in weather. A little less of the, oh yeah, well, we can't grow because we're going to have a freeze. Yes, you do need to be aware the things you tried to plant that were really summer vegetables are going to freeze with that first snap. But the temperature control, the amount of daylight hours, the amount of moisture that's in the air, all of those things will actually change with the season regardless of what the temperatures are doing. So these are still important things to be aware of. And in addition to that, knowing as we come to the end of the cool down season when the flowers are beginning to pop again, which generally only happens in spring, but for us it kind of happens twice a year, which is really nice. We're having another pop of flowers, which is fantastic, right as we move into our Thanksgiving meals, our celebration meals in the holiday season. That means that we have availability to things that I'm harvesting right now, like beautiful cut flowers. Now, this celosia you guys have seen me talking about has been a very successful cut flower after the summertime and is really a nice, colorful addition to a fall floral arrangement. And then, of course, you've also got this Mexican sunflower, or Tethlonia, that's kind of an orange flower. You see, that's what we were looking at here at the beginning of it. It's also, it's a ginger cut flower. It's not something you would use for like a floral arrangement or a professional floral arrangement, but it's a very nice addition to a Thanksgiving table. And then, of course, pops of those zinnias. The zinnias will actually be affected even with a small snap of cold weather, because I've even noticed over the last few weeks when we've had those drops in temperature, when we jump back up, but we have those drops of temperature, it really affects the zinnias' flowers and the way that they produce flowers. So keep an eye out on your zinnias and look at the ones that actually maintain really well and the ones that are more affected by the colder temperature. That's some things to be aware of. Just like in February when we dealt with that massive freeze and after the hurricane, and we dealt with a major change in our area and our climate and kind of a cleanup of our land, we need to look with each shift in the season, we need to look at the plants and see what's happening. Are we having a shift in some sort of an insect increase? Now, one of the things that I noticed in an area this year, just a few days ago, was that I was dealing with some Harlequin beetles. Just a small amount of them. But I always talk to you guys about making sure that if you begin to see an infestation, you look around as what you can do. Now, you know me, I'm not going to do a broad spray of any kind of pesticide, even if it's an organic pesticide. What I'm going to do is focus on the area that is dealing with the initial start of an invasion. If I catch it at the initial start of the invasion, then I can stop it before it gets out of control. There's several ways to stop it, but the two main ways that I'm going to stop it are to make sure that I increase the amount of food that's available to the predators that will help me eat those Harlequin beetles, and use my little fingers to smush and squish, because then I'm a predator that adds to the amount of death that's happening in that particular area. Now, if I begin to understand that what I'm dealing with right there is actually a plant that's getting older, and is because when you're dealing with a permaculture garden like what I deal with here, I do have plants in this garden, brassicas. Brassica is your broccoli, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprout. That's that family that plant goes in. They will attract harlequins when they are older plants and they're not getting the nutrition and the ingredients that they need from the soil, the health that they need from the soil. And if they're an older plant dealing with that, then that's a situation where you go ahead and you just cut the plant out from the bottom as close as you can get it to the soil, and then just throw it out to your chickens or put it in your compost pile or whatever it is that you choose to do with that. But if you're not aware of what's going on in your garden, and if you're not aware of shifts that are happening seasonally in your garden, then you won't see little things start to begin to create a problem that can become a bigger thing that would require a much more wipeout of things. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that as you're beginning to get to the season where things are starting to germinate and you're starting to see a lot more production or a lot more plants in your garden after hot summer, got things planted, seeds are taking off, all that, things seem to be not doing as well as they did this season before. There's a couple of things you need to look at. Number one, are the plants beginning to look like they have a pest or a pathogen on them? A pathogen will also often look like not just green leaves, not just stems being green, but maybe like spots, rust spots, or like some kind of powdery mold on them, something like that. If you're not seeing that, which could be too much water, which could be just that you've got a plant in that particular area that has contracted some sort of pathogen and now it's sharing with its friends all around it, that kind of thing. If you're not seeing that, then you might be seeing the other thing I said, which is not as much development, maybe not as much green. Okay, so then you start to think about, is the plant getting access to all of the nutrients, minerals, and things like that it needs? So that would be, of course, sunlight. It's got to have plenty of the vitamin D and all of the things that it pulls out of the sun, the photosynthesis work that it does. It's got to pull that out of the sun and put it into its plants. So that's one of the things. And because we're in the winter time where we have only like a max of 8 hours sun at all in our area, we have got to get at least 6 hours of sun to those plants. So the shading that was a benefit in the summertime is a deterrent, it's a problem. And you need to do everything you can to make sure that you either shift your garden around where you plant in a different space in the wintertime than you plant in the summertime, or you need to cut things back like we talked about with that tree. Cut it back, trim it up, clean it up so that it gets more sunlight into that area. The other thing could very likely be that that particular new garden space or garden space you've used 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, maybe 4 seasons even, is getting into some sort of nutrient deficiency. So it might be nitrogen, it might be potassium, it might be phosphorus, it might be one of the other billion ones that we never even name beyond NPK. So you're looking for at the baseline of every single thing I just named for you, you're looking for and investigating your garden well enough to understand what little things you can do to help speed up nature. Now, we're not trying to compete with nature. We're not trying to do nature's job. We're simply trying to speed it up a little bit faster, because things take eons, centuries, eras. They take a very long time for the earth to heal and to fix and whatever. So anything we can do to put that nutrition back into the soil will help the plants begin to do what they need to do to solve the problem. So that's kind of what we've been looking at here as it relates to looking at this transition. What am I doing? Because most of you know that these gardens are young. They've only had 1, maybe 2 seasons out here at the farm where I'm at. So now I'm beginning to see what are my real pest pressures, because now that I've had a winter season, I've had the ability for a lot of the pests to get to die, and then an increase of pests and a decrease. My predators died, but now my predators are increasing. There's been a lot more ability for them to make a lot more babies, because there's plenty of space out here to make babies. There's place for things to develop. So now I can see what insects I have. I can see what pathogens I'm dealing with. I know that I'm dealing with potentially nematodes in my soil right now. One of the things that I can do to help mitigate nematodes in my soil would be to make sure that I have the beneficial nematodes in my soil. Another thing that I can do is make sure I have plants like marigold that I'm companioning in my garden. These are all ways, and the way that you can begin to know that, especially this time of year, is that because you're planting root vegetables, your root vegetables start to get kind of knotty. They start to get little spots on them. They just don't grow as pretty and clean and like a nice carrot that's just pretty and clean. It starts to get little bumps on it. Your radish is not a nice pretty round radish. It's kind of weird shaped. It's got bumps and stuff like that. Beautiful flavor most of the time, 95% of the time. You're not to be concerned about the health of the plant or whatever. It just doesn't look very pretty, and it actually could eat up the root before the plant can really establish itself. So those are the things you need to be on the lookout for. Of course, those Harlequin beetles. I'm also noticing an increase of the cucumber beetles, which is something that I know to happen around here as well. Some of the other shifts we're starting to make is that we're getting to where we're starting to get into some of the cooler flowering annuals that are really good for our benefit. They're beneficial, of course, always flowers in your garden, very beneficial, but are also good for your edible flowers. So I do have a few of my little zinnias here that I'm harvesting still. Those are nice little edible flowers, but also I can start to pop out my pansies as well. I can also start to pop out more of my marigolds, and there's lots of flowers, calendula. You'll start to see the pop on your nasturtiums, because I'm just now starting to put my nasturtium flowers in as I begin to put my softer leafed things in. So I'm putting in the broccolis, I'm putting in the spinaches, I'm putting in my lettuce, I'm putting in more of my mustard greens, more of the different types of softer leafed greens, because my insect pressure is shifting into a different type of insect pressure. So the caterpillar that was eating and making holes and everything is starting to migrate, leave. We're starting to not have, and as soon as we have those cold snaps, it puts those little things to sleep, basically. I mean, if you think about it, if you've ever gathered up vegetables, greens or whatever, and you've put them in your refrigerator, you've bagged them up, you put them in your refrigerator, and then later on you pull them out, and you all of a sudden now there's a caterpillar that's still been alive inside that bag with it. He just went to sleep when it got cold. So that's basically what happens every time a cold snap comes through. All the little insects just go, and then the sun comes back and it's 85 degrees and like, whoa, back to business. And then they just start going back to their business again. And so those are some things that help us as gardeners during this time of year because of those soft leafy greens that we're looking to grow, like on our beautiful nasturtium edible flowers that we want to cut from. We're going to keep those growing in the cooler seasons of the year. Now, nasturtium is something that I would buy a lot of seeds for because if you plant it this time of year and we have a hard freeze again, or even a mild freeze, you will lose some of those nasturtium plants. But you'll want to put them back in again so that they pop back again in the springtime. So that's something to keep in mind. But a lot of the other edible flowers that we like to plant this time of year, like the bachelor buttons, the calendulas, the pansies, even the snapdragons, although I don't use snapdragons for edible. I'm not saying they're not, it's not one that I use for edible. They're going to actually do really well even after a hard freeze. They might get a little crunchy, but then within a couple days they're going to get all like back and happy and green and then put their flowers on again. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of this time of the year is when you can have really some of those unique edible flowers that we might not be able to grow, or we're not able to grow a lot of the rest of the time of year. So that's some of the stuff that I'm doing. Let's walk down here a little bit further so I can show you some of the other things I've been talking about this morning. So here's a row right here where you can see that you can already tell that I did begin planting my onions. These were some onions that a local grower was selling, and so they were even earlier. They're a bunching onion, and I just popped them in between. I like to plant onions around and intermixed as a companion in everything because allium is really helpful with the insects. Now, there's some things that people would say, never plant allium next to this or that. And I do pay attention to that. I'd have to dig in a little bit deeper. I believe that I don't plant alliums with my potatoes, things like that. But generally alliums, and I like to use plant names because I think that if we understand plant names, then we have a better understanding of what grows well on our property. So the alliums, of course, just like the brassicas, those are plant families. The allium is your onions, your leeks, your garlic, your elephant garlic, any of your basically bulbing onion type varieties of plants.
Can you go down that row and tell us everything that's planted more or less?
Yes, absolutely.
It looks very varied.
It is very varied, and this one has got, okay, so you can see I've got a nice little radish right here, right? And then I've got a purple head cabbage. Now the reason it looks a little spindly like this is because I actually trim the green off of it while they're young and pretty and put them into a nice mix. I make a nice mix, salad mix, all cool season. All cool season, I use my stuff. As long as my brassicas are still small, I make a nice mix, a salad mix. Once they start to get really big, then I start to make a hearty green mix. But either way, I've always got, through this whole green season, through this whole cool season, I've got lots and lots of green mixes going on. Lots and lots of salad mixes going on. And one of the things that you could do as it relates to that, you're just going down your rows, you're popping off tops of okra. You're getting a little green there. You're getting a nice little green, young green broccoli or cauliflower. You're going to see over here, this is a mustard green. And then I'm starting to see pop carrots. These are carrots. This is a snapdragon. Here's a radish. Some cilantro. Careful of those ants back there. Cilantro. This is another type of flower that is also an edible flower that grows well in this, this time of year. Hold on, let me find the name because I can't remember. It's a dianthus. So it's got little red flowers on it. One of the things that you can do, especially with edible flowers, or any flowers for that matter, is make sure you're deadheading your flowers, so popping those off. I like to kind of leave them around, not like, I don't just like throw them out or take them to my chickens or anything like that, because I want these things to grow up in here, grow back up in here.
So you just dropped that deadhead on the ground nearby.
Yes, exactly. And I do like to look around while I'm in and down in these things for two things. One, I'm looking for those insects, any kind of invasion of things. I'm also looking for any kind of disease that I might be concerned about. So I'm going through these rows like this. I'm, popping off flowers from here because if we have a freeze, those flowers will get a snap and they won't be happy anymore. But in the meantime, I can use those beautiful zinnia flowers for beautiful arrangements for the season. And then I can also use them for edible flowers as well. So I'm trimming off of all of these little sections of stuff going on.
What's this right here?
Yeah, so right here I've got Swiss chard. This is all Swiss chard growing up in here. But as I was telling my group yesterday in the class, that even though I decided, okay, this row is going to be a big section of Swiss chard. Now, I don't want to plant my beets here in this same row, so I do have to be a little bit methodical, like a companion, because I'm an efficiency grower, because I'm trying to farm and grow enough to feed a few more extra families in addition to my own. I want to be able to make sure that I do have a little bit of ease when it comes to harvesting and things like that. So, and these are all hands in the dirt learning things. Yes, I might have been able to read this in a book. There might have been someone else that had told me that. But the best way for me to learn is to actually start these projects, get it going, and then begin to understand, okay, right, I don't want to plant beets on the companion same row as I plant Swiss chard, because that's going to make it more challenging for me to know whether or not this is a beet or a Swiss chard. But I can tell that this is a Swiss chard, and so now all of these, so I'm going in and making a mixed bucket. I'm filling it with some of my nicest, greenest, prettiest leaves of okra, some of my nicest, prettiest greens of roselle, my sweet potato greens, I'm using those. I'm using my green harmony. I am now finally starting to harvest arugula and other types of mixed greens, kale. I'm using lettuce. All of these things, Swiss chard, all just mixed in here, and then I can just swipe through the rows and just pull off the stuff that I want for a salad mix. Now, if I'm needing some basil, I've also still got basil. Yes, it's starting to get diminished in the amount of production basil's making because it doesn't like the cold weather. But I've got it here in this. It's going to reseed as well. It sort of has already reseeded, so that means it will come back in the when the temperatures start to get warm again. Some of it'll try to come back right now, even before we have a freeze. It'll start to germinate again. Go ahead and let that stuff grow. That's no problem. That's what's happening with some of the Swiss sunflowers that folks were mentioning yesterday. Oh, you've got sunflowers growing right now. Like this, right here. So these are the types of things that aren't going to make it through a freeze, but these were purposefully companion planted in here because they're making me a lot of organic material, carbon, that I can then drop back in place here, and potentially making me flowers in November or December that could go into a flower arrangement during my season of holidays when I'm trying to really make some nice flowers to put into things. So these are some things that you can play with, but even if it gets a freeze and it gets knocked back before you get any production, that's no big deal, because now this row gets cleaned up enough where I can go back in here and plant some broccoli and some cabbage and some other things like that in the place of where those were covering the soil. Now you can see, as I mentioned earlier, one row down there is very flat, not super grown. It's not getting as many hours of sunlight as it needs to grow fast, because down here in the direct sunlight all day long, you're seeing big growth very fast happening over here. These are mixed rows of mustard green, a little bit of lettuce, sweet alyssum, that's what this is right here, which is a flower that usually likes to grow in the springtime, but because of these fall temperatures, we basically can just do the exact same thing, we just have a shorter window. And that's the trick with growing in our area that is so essential, and that is that if we keep reseeding things, if we keep throwing the seeds down from things that we've deadheaded, putting them back in the ground, they're going to germinate when they're happiest. They're going to germinate, they're going to grow. If they don't flower and fruit before it gets to the freeze season, that's okay, because they've made the greens that you can eat, or they've made the carbon that you can leave on your ground or for your animals to eat as well. And they've added to the soil. They've protected the soil for the summer heat, to keep the temperatures down in the soil, to keep the moisture in the soil. So all of those things that I talked about at the beginning about being aware of what we can do to speed up the process of nature means that as we just plant and plant and plant more excess than what we need, things that might not grow as well in that time of year, then we can see things happening where we do actually grow sunflowers, or where we have carrots that we planted. Like last year, I planted my carrots late in spring, but a carrot is actually a biannual plant that if you let it grow for 2 years, you will actually see a carrot that you only know is the root, carrot, grow a whole year, and then when it gets to 18 months, it starts to pop some white flowers on it, and then you actually have restarted your own carrots, and now you have some carrot seeds as well. But that's what happens when you are not afraid to just keep planting throughout the entire year. And I plant much all year long. Now granted, I stopped planting in the ground in about July and August, but I keep planting seeds all year long so that I've always got plants to put in that can handle different temperatures, that can handle different types of seasonal changes to the temperature of the soil or the amount of moisture that's in the air, the amount of rain we get, all of those different things. And you get to get a better idea of how a specific flower, a specific fruit, a specific type of green is going to do on your property based on what you have available for it compared to what it's going to do on everyone else's property. And that's an essential part of gardening. Gardening isn't something that's going to be monochrome, the exact same everywhere you go. It's not something you can plug into a computer and say, just do it this way every single time. Because it's going to end up costing you more money, more labor, unless you're an AI robot. And if you're an AI robot, that's a whole different conversation that I'm not interested in getting into any deeper right now. But otherwise, if you're a human that wants to enjoy your garden and get the fresh, delicious food that Mother Nature and Gaia has available for us, then what we need to do is be a part of it. Get involved in it. Plant it as often as we can. And use the beautiful abundance of it. So you see me collecting edible flowers to use on my beautiful holiday dishes and salads and all of that kind of stuff. You see me collecting cut flowers out of my garden to make beautiful flower arrangements for my friends and families at these different holiday events. And you see me constantly planting a mixture of seeds, planting cover crops in all the areas, even in my yard, throwing out seeds of all kinds. I have, how many?
I took a photo. How many are in that one? If you had to guess. 200?
200?
So you probably have about 3,000 onions.
3,000 onions, of which Joe asked me, well, will they all last? How will you get them all planted that fast? Well, it's going to take me several weeks to get them planted as quickly as I can. And there's some of them that are going to dry out. Some of them are going to get moldy and die. That's going to be the reality of it. But the fact of the matter is that I can just plant them, and I can plant them close together. I want to show you how close I'm talking, because you can harvest. So this is a new row that I just started planting again, cleaning it up. Look, I've got watermelons right there. As soon as these, like, who has watermelons in November and December? Santa Claus is going to get a watermelon on his porch, on the porch from Freedom Harvest Farms rather than a cookie. I hope he likes watermelon. Maybe he's from the South and he eats like some delicious watermelon.
I would like to think that Santa wants seasonal foods from all over the world.
I bet he does.
Cookies in every single house would get boring after the 10th
He probably has
so.
gluten intolerance at this point.
Oh, well, he's got a belly full of jelly.
So all of that being said, this wasn't really all of that being said. This wasn't really really doing anything. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to get out here and pull back the sweet potatoes because we haven't had a freeze yet that's going to knock the sweet potato vines out. My sweet potatoes are still producing really well, and I'm just going to keep letting them because, number one, the greens from a sweet potato are extremely nutritious, very soft, and a very good way to bulk up that green that you have available for you this time of year as your Swiss chard's starting to increase in size, and as your spinach and your lettuce and all those things. I'm back. This is such a soft leaf that it's like spinach. It doesn't have a ton of flavor. It's not bitter, and it doesn't have like a robust flavor like some of our greens that we like to eat do. But it's got a flavor, and it's very nutritious, and it's a consistency and a texture that's good. So as long as it's continuing to grow and it's happy, I'm going to let it keep doing its thing because I can keep harvesting on that. But now I'm starting to push back from this and pull out some of those cow peas, black-eyed peas. If they're not hurting anybody, I just leave them because I like to leave that. That creates life. There's life and nutrients, and things are being shared in the mycorrhizal fungi ether network that's happening underneath the soil. One's got calcium and one's got minerals of another kind of minerals that it's sharing, nitrogen, blah, 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 blah. So they're interacting with each other in here, and that's why I do this nice mixture. But if you look here where I've planted, some cauliflower, I've gone around it and just very close planted onions. So see how close they are? Now, I want my onion to get this big. But they're not all going to be able to get that big as close as I have them planted. So what's going to happen is, let's say I've got a flood and water's standing in my swale down here. Well, these onions along the bottom, they're going to be standing in way too much water. I'm going to need to go back in there and kind of pull them out a little earlier. Or it's just got to the point of the year when I'm ready to start harvesting onions, and I've got enough onions that are, you know, small little bulb onions, that I'm just ready to start harvesting early onions.
From a kitchen point of view, it's nice to have different size onions.
Yes,
because
exactly.
Sometimes I need a small one to make a taco, and sometimes I need a big one to make a casserole.
And what you would call that would be like a green onion or an early bulbing onion. And they are different than when you let them stay out here. So maybe you got that going down here along the edge, but right here, this one's just growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just stays in here all the way till July, when it's hot and it's dry and I'm not watering anything anymore because I'm not germinating anything anymore. Now I just let it dry out, and then I can pull it up out of the soil whenever I'm ready to. That is, if I haven't dealt with any flooding. If I haven't dealt with any flooding, I just pull it out when I'm ready to, and then I can store it in a place where it can start to dry out even more. And that's where they basically get cured. So then you have to have like hanging racks and all kinds of things like that to cure your onions, if you have to pull them out of the ground right away. But if you don't have to pull them out of the ground, they can actually cure in the ground themselves there in the summertime. So that's really a nice way to just keep them all planted really closely.
Pop an
and
onion
just
in the
fill them
ground.
in there. So, and here's the other thing that I was talking to somebody about yesterday. Get yourself a metal, this is actually kind of a weeding fork, but get yourself a metal pole, and then you can just literally poke down into the soil, make a hole, and it makes everything so much easier. I don't want to plant those because I want to stick with the ones I was planting. And then I'm just going to pop out one of these onions, and I'm going to throw it down in there, and I'm just going to cover it up like this. Now, there's all kinds of rules about don't plant it too deep, don't plant it too shallow, whatever. Things are going to happen. Soil is going to roll off. If you start to see that you're getting to where it's like, you know, way too uncovered and the whole bulb is uncovered, you might go back up there and put some soil around the bulb if you choose. But over the years, I've found that I just plant plenty of onions, and some are going to be perfectly planted, and they're going to come out of the ground late July, and they're going to be a nice big fat bulb, and some of them are going to be young green things that I take out early because they're just not developing as well as some of the other stuff. But either way, the amount of money I paid per one of these is so nominal that any growth that happens is something that is valuable to me. And in addition to that, it creates that pest control that allium creates and helps with its allelopathic nature, and it shares its hormones and spreads things out that other bugs, other things don't want. And so that's the reason why I'm so adamant about making sure that I get plenty of onion sets. Now, if I haven't told you this already, make sure that when you're ordering onion sets, you're ordering or purchasing onion sets, if you're buying them from a local nursery, that you're buying short day onions. A lot of times what happens at the big box stores, as you've heard me mention before, the big box stores don't really care what actually grows. They just want you to buy stuff. And when they sell you the little shallots and all that kind of stuff that they sell you at the store, 9 times out of 10 they are long day onions, and that is we do not get enough cold weather down here for them to develop a bulb that will actually be the bulb that you're looking for. So we're looking for short day onions. That's going to be your yellow Granics, your 1015, your red Creoles. There's several varieties of great, beautiful, giant, sweet, delicious, white, red, all kinds of beautiful onions that we can grow down here, but we're looking for the short day bulbs or the short day onion sets.
If
That's
you find short day onions at the box store, go ahead and get those?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. You just need to make sure that it's short day onions, and that's an important thing for us to know down here as well. So we're getting to the end here, but I just wanted to show you a little of the mixture of things. I mentioned that I'm still planting buckwheat cover crop. If it freezes, that will freeze. But I'm also starting to plant a lot more calendulas, more beets, lots of green onions I can still continue to plant, plenty of bachelor buttons, more celery. I'm just going to keep planting celery as often as I can. Lots and lots of the leaf spinach. That's the Bloomsdale spinach, all of that pretty spinach that we like. Now's the time to plant that. Now's the time to plant your lettuce. When it comes to lettuce planting, because the seeds are so tiny, unless I have a pelleted lettuce seed, and I buy pelleted lettuce seeds for my head lettuce because I want my head lettuce to be right here, but my leaf lettuce is okay if I just spread it out because it can grow wherever and just create like this nice little mound of, and then I'm just going to go back in and trim the leaves out anyways. So a broadcast of your leaf lettuce is perfectly fine, or any kind of like mustard greens or any of that. But if you're trying to specifically put like an iceberg head or a big nice butter crunch head, put those with your pelleted seeds if you've got them, or take the time to put them in exactly where you want to. You'll be happy that you did it that way. So that's all the things that we have going on, except that, oh yeah, that's right, we were going to walk over and show you some new things going on at the chicken coop. So let's go over there and do that really quick. And there has been so much stuff going on at the farm and just in our lives the last couple of weeks. You can probably tell my voice is still crackling after a week, and part of that is that what I would call empathic nature that a lot of people actually do know a lot about, especially folks that are gardeners, because I think the reason that we become gardeners, especially women, creative women, we become gardeners because it's a place for us to ground our empath, the sensitivities that we're running across when we're interacting with a lot of people. And so someone like me and Joe and I, we're interacting with a lot of people. We're bringing people out to the farm for events, we're putting on classes, we're talking on podcasts, we're talking on live videos and things like that. So what ends up happening is that you start to feel drained. You start to feel like you have a hangover and you haven't really even been drinking, or that you've had no sleep in weeks, except that you've been going to bed at 9 o'clock at night and you're still waking up exhausted. A lot of that has to do with that empathic nature and the constant engagement with other people and the energy that it takes to do that kind of stuff. And so one of the ways that I can heal that for myself is to make sure that I don't go, oh, I'm too tired to garden. I'm never too tired to garden. Even if I have to go out to my garden and just sit down in the garden and piddle, I'm never too tired to get connected with the earth and allow Gaia, Mother Nature, to give the energy back to me that I've been allowing to go to other humans that are requiring it and hoping for it. And so that's a lot of what I've been doing lately in between the times of doing classes. Now, we moved the baby chicks, so they are really getting much bigger now. And how many weeks do they have left in here? More, about 5 more weeks in here?
About 5 weeks. Seven would be ideal.
Yeah.
So that they're.
Well, they've been in here for 2 weeks now already.
Well, I know, but you're typically going to introduce them to a flock.
Yes.
When they're big enough to do that.
Right. And
so that's 12 to 14 weeks total of them.
And then we've already created a total chaos over here in the coop with new ladies. So putting the little baby chicks in there, we're going to definitely give them some time to get some fighting weight on them, because there's some fighting going on in our coop right now. So this is one of the new ladies right here.
If you want to grab some scratch, you can probably draw them out. That's the trash can on the left.
This over here is all, no, this isn't, you know, I think this is all new.
So what happened last night?
We brought over 10 more hens.
And this is that the new flock? They're kind of mixed in now.
No, they're not. No.
That's the new flock.
That's the new flock.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them.
And then the one that just went. Oh, look at all those eggs they're laying, though.
Yeah, I did not collect yesterday, so I need to collect tonight, and then tomorrow we'll see exactly how many we're getting.
All right, let's see. Is it this one? All right, come on. So these are the older ladies right here. That's the original flock. That's literally all of the original
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
We're missing
plus Maleficent.
And Nimrod. All right, now y'all come out.
So when you introduce a new flock to an existing flock, then they don't get along. They don't recognize one another's hormones. They don't recognize one another's looks. So last night we got 10 new hens that we rehomed from a gentleman who just didn't want to do it anymore.
Ladybirds used to be able to hang out with the new.
And we bring them over, we stick them in the coop in a cage, 2 cages, and then at night we take them out one by one and stick them up on the roosting board where they sleep. And last night they already started whacking each other in the head as they try to now integrate and establish a brand new pecking order. Nimrod, our rooster, is at the top of that pecking order, of course, as the lone male. But then the other hens have a pecking order. You're going to have a weakest hen, you're going to have an alpha hen. And right now it's all in disarray because we've combined two groups together.
And so you have measured the coop, the size of how many chickens can live inside of a coop.
What's the truth, or what did I tell you?
The truth.
Well, what I told you was 32.
What's the truth?
I don't want to tell you.
No, tell me.
46.
Okay, that's fine. So, no, but I think that that's important.
Because I told you 32 and it was 2 weeks
Don't
before you had
lie.
us all the way up to it.
Yeah, don't lie.
Well, it was going to be a Christmas present.
Perfect. So the reason is because it's important to know inside your coop the size of floor that the chickens can live in. Because at night they're going to all go in here, and then the amount of roosting space that's available for them.
48.
48.
Right.
We're not going to get 48.
This is
chickens in
96
here.
square feet. You want to have 2 square foot per bird, so that's 48.
But then you also have to consider how much run they have, because they're not getting to go outside of this. And 12 chickens basically took this run down to the ground without these other ones in here. Now these other ones are in here. So 32 is a good number, even if we could put more inside there. It doesn't necessarily make sense to have put more where we could fit them out here. Now, things that are going to start happening is that we do have the tractor over there, which we've only been putting 2 hens in. We could put 3. That tractor can hold more than 2 full-grown hens. It can hold 3 or 4.
Sure.
So we can start moving. We're also talking about putting out some more guillotines in this fence over here, where we can create runs that go out of the area as well. And so those are just some things to keep in mind, and to keep a watch on how the flocks, the multiple flocks, do well in here. We need another rooster for sure.
We may have one in here.
At least one, maybe 2 over there. If we've got 2 roosters over there, then I feel like we're pretty much done for a while.
Explain that real quick. We ordered female hens, and every single time we've ordered only hens.
Pullets.
We never had a mistake with sexing.
Correct.
But you did something different this go around when we ordered these new 8 baby chicks.
Correct. Well, the main reason was because there were I wanted some different types of chickens. And the timing of the year that we were ordering them, there wasn't a whole lot of variety available in the hens. So in the hens, I'm going to go ahead and get Easter eggers and olive eggers and make sure I get my pullets. And that's an important thing to look at, because if I'm egg producing, or that's part of the goal, is to make sure we've got eggs for consumption, for sales, whatever, then I'm going to make sure I get the types of chickens that are going to lay the prettiest and the best eggs. But in addition to that, I like to have a healthy flock of different types of chickens, and things that are attractive, because we are an educational farm and we want people to come out here and look at things. But I also need roosters, okay? So if I want some interesting chickens, I'm gonna go over to the straight run option for purchase. Straight run means they don't know whether it's a hen or a rooster.
You're just getting a chick.
And if I get that rooster, that chicken, and it ends up being a rooster, then that's perfect. Then I've got some pretty roosters, and then healthy, happy, big, fat laying hens. That's kind of what I'm looking for here. And I know that there might be some judgment as it relates to human consciousness related to how you handle chickens, but they are chickens after all.
So we've got 22 adults and 8 babies, juveniles.
Yes.
And together, when we integrate the coop in about when we integrate all of the flocks that we have in about 5-6 weeks, we will have a total of 30.
30 chickens.
If it turns out that we have only females, then we have space to buy or obtain 2 more roosters.
Yes. And I actually already have a friend that has a few beautiful Banty roosters he
That's
wants us
what
to
I
take
want.
some of.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking for. That's
A lot
what's
going
happening. And if you listen to the podcast, that's Dinner Table Talks. It's anywhere you listen to a podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can look at it at dinnertabletalks.com. That'll take you to it as well. That's our podcast that we do weekly. And the title, it's not been titled, but I can already tell you what the title of this Monday's episode. It's going to be an interesting day. And it was. And it's been an interesting week. And we are also naming all of these chickens, although we learned that some of them already had names. but we're still going to want some of our fans out there to help us name our chickens. So pay attention to the podcast that's coming out on Monday. Check out the podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Dinner Table Talks is what you're looking for. And of course, you're looking for the name Joe Hilliard and Aislynn Campbell. That's us, and we're loving our life so much. We hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks for joining us at Freedom Harvest Farms. And as always, I hope you have the best week ever, and I love you. Bye.